Okay. Hi, everyone. I am back with another recent grad interview. And today I'm so excited to talk with Sarena. She graduated last year from the University of Georgia, and she is now a university recruiter for Cox Communications. So, Sarena, thank you so much for being here. It's such a pleasure to have this conversation with you.
Absolutely. Always great talking with you.
Thanks. And you guys, of course, Serena and I networked to each other on LinkedIn. We've had quite a few conversations and excited to have her here. So we're going to get right into this. Not only did you just graduate about a year ago, but now you're kind of on the other side of the table, so to speak, and you're a university recruiter helping bring other people into the company. So I would love to know just right off the bat, given the experience you've had in the past year since graduation, now that you are working, what are maybe 2 to 3 things you would tell yourself back at graduation that you didn't know that you didn't know then that you know now?
Yeah, I would say it's been a lot of learnings. I would say being on the other side of the table and being a recruiter and just seeing people's resumes and seeing how they interact during the recruitment process as well as how they do during interviews. So for me, I think one of the things that is more apparent as a recruiter is that speed is everything. So, for example, I won't necessarily follow up with every single candidate and say and remind them to sign up for an interview because there are other people who sign up for an interview. So if someone forgets to see an email in their inbox, then that's completely on them. I'm not necessarily going
Mm,
to chase after them just because I want them to interview because there are other candidates that want us. So I remember last semester, sometimes I would just save jobs on LinkedIn instead of applying right away. So that's
okay.
something that I would have done a little bit faster is just, set aside intentional time and make sure I'm not just scrolling through jobs and saving them for later, but actually applying for them right as they come out and just being on top of LinkedIn as much as possible.
Great. So that's really helpful because I know that's a question I get a lot as well. So looking back then, how would you suggest a new grad structure their time then? And obviously, you guys, we know everybody's time, their day, their priorities looks completely different. But what's
Mhm.
maybe one tip to help structure that time that you would give a new grad if they're looking for jobs and really have to stay on top of the application process?
Yeah, that's a great question. If you're a new grad and you just graduated from college and now you're full time looking for a job in the job
Hmm.
search, I would say make sure you do the same thing at the same time every single day, as opposed to just having an unstructured routine. So, for example, maybe you have the most energy in the morning. So, from 9 to 11 o'clock, maybe you are applying for applications during that time. And then in the afternoon, maybe you are networking with professionals on LinkedIn and doing more outreach and sending those
Hmm.
messages to people. And then maybe around 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock, you're doing coffee chats. And then perhaps in the evening, you're working on interview prep. Or what you can also do instead of having things on a daily rhythm is kind of have them on a weekly rhythm. So, for example, if you want to practice interviews Thursdays and Tuesdays, and then apply for jobs Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, that's totally acceptable as well. Just try to figure out something that works for you and make sure you stick to it.
You guys, this is amazing advice. So, consistency is what I heard, right?
Mhm.
Structure. And as you heard from her, it doesn't have to be all day, every day. She even just in that example structure, morning, afternoon, evening, break it up, give yourself breaks. And what I love about what you just said too, Serena, is you're setting yourself up for success. You're actively transitioning from a full-time student to a full-time professional with that structure because most likely when you land a job that's probably going to be this cadence of your day as well and those hours, so you're already mentally and structured practicing your day. Love that. Is that something that you did while you were job searching, or is that something that you kind of retrospectively would tell yourself to do?
Right, right. Yeah, so I was job searching while I was also a student, and then I also had a part-time job. So
Wow. Okay.
even though my weeks still had a certain amount of structure, I don't think the time that I spent job searching was intentionally structured out, which I should have done looking back at it. And I think that's part of the reason why my mental health kind of suffered during the job search process was because I wasn't being intentional about blocking off that time in order to work on
Mm.
certain aspects of the job search. So it was a lot more scatterbrained, and I was just applying to whatever I saw and practicing interviews maybe once in a while. So that's something I definitely would recommend for people to do in order to just, keep their sanity.
Love that. Yeah, because we definitely don't want anyone to start having mental health concerns and stress. It's already a stressful process as you interview and look for a job. And, that's why someone like working with a coach like me or another coach that's a great fit for you can help you structure that and get into the right routine and really align with the jobs that are a great match so you're not wasting time looking for jobs that aren't a good match for you. So thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that you did have that mental stress going through that process, and I'm glad that you were able to get over that for yourself and have a good outcome. That's fantastic. So
Yeah. Yeah.
um I do have to ask this question. It's a burning question that obviously I support clients on and how to stand out and land the job that's right for them. You clearly did that well. And now, like I said, you're on the other side and you're a recruiter. So, for somebody that is a recent graduate, just coming out of school and they're a little bit insecure or unsure about their experience that they have when they're looking for these entry level positions, what is one way now as a recruiter that you would suggest that they can stand out and help themselves be a competitive candidate?
Mhm. For sure. I would tailor my advice more towards a virtual setting since a lot of students, or I mean, everyone's kind of in a virtual setting now. And
Sure.
I think the world of recruiting and the whole landscape has kind of changed a little bit. So students should definitely take advantage of that and be sure to use unconventional ways, especially when it comes to the virtual setting. And so, for example, like I would double down on your LinkedIn presence and start posting content on LinkedIn in order to attract those professional connections and show people a little bit more of your personality and make them more likely to connect with you. And then I would also reach out to alumni networks or even just ask around in your family connections or even friend connections to see who's out there that you can connect with, because I think a lot more people are willing to hop on calls and hop on video chats in order to talk to you during this time, especially since we can't network in person as much.
Sure.
So there are also other things like showing up to virtual career fairs, which is something that has been really successful for me in the past. Doing those kinds of things helps distinguish yourself because not everyone does those sort of things. A lot of people will tend to sign up for different opportunities but then not show up. So if
Mm-hmm.
you're able to show up for those opportunities and then follow through with them, then I think that will help you stand out as a candidate. So for example, another thing you can do is if you go to a virtual conference, you can connect with the speakers on LinkedIn afterwards and send a note, and they're going to be more likely to help you than if you were just a random person on LinkedIn.
Sure.
Or if you participate in a case competition and you did really well in it, maybe you can connect with the judges and have a coffee chat with them. Things like that I think are important in making the most of the opportunities that you get to.
Love that. And you guys, I did not ask her to talk about networking. She did that on her own. And I love to talk about networking, the strategy, and definitely do it. So I'm so happy you shared all of those things because the common thread in that answer of distinction and becoming a competitive candidate was networking in some way, right? So you mentioned family, friends, case competition. If you go to a virtual event, so networking was the theme, and also you guys commitment to yourself. I think that's really important that you show up for yourself literally and figuratively. When you start your career, and definitely there's really not going to be anyone there holding you accountable. Yes, obviously your boss is going to be there, but your own professional development at your job, outside your job, is going to be for you to take care of and ownership of that. So I love that you shared that. Thank you. And I'm curious, I don't know the answer to this before I ask you, but it sounds like you're an advocate and you actively network. Obviously, we met through networking. Did networking help you land your recruiter position that you're in now? And if so, what did that look like if you're willing to share that?
Yeah, sure. So in some ways, yes, and in some ways, no, because it wasn't like I reached out to someone and asked for a coffee chat. I think that's what
Sure.
people perceive networking as. But in my case, it was more following up but I did connect with them on LinkedIn. So I'm not sure if, it would necessarily be called networking, but perhaps it was. So for my situation, my university, the University of Georgia, was hosting a virtual career fair in the fall. So I attended that and signed up for different company sessions. So I
Mm,
attended all of them. And at one particular company, they didn't really have any of the positions I was looking for, or at least they didn't really speak to all the positions specifically, which of course, they're university recruiters, they wouldn't know all the
sure.
different full-time jobs available. So I just connected with one of the recruiters on LinkedIn and asked them if there happened to be any full-time positions in HR or recruiting. And she said, check the website. And then she also
Mhm.
said, wait a second, there might actually be an opening on my immediate team. So I interviewed for that position and that's how I got it.
Awesome. So I have to ask that as a last question then. So you stood out, you made the ask. That is networking 100% because you didn't just take the assumption that as the recruiter from the university event that she would remember you. You reached out, you said thank you, you asked the question. So now that you are a university recruiter and you're on the receiving end, I'm sure of hundreds of messages that are the same. Um, how can someone like yourself, who is a recent grad, is going through the same situation? How can they genuinely then befriend and build that relationship with the recruiter so that if there is something open, they can make that ask when it's the appropriate time?
Yeah, definitely. So for me, something that I don't like to see in messages is someone immediately telling me, hey, I'm this kind of student looking for this kind of role. Can you help me out? Because, we don't necessarily have roles at the time that I can help direct you towards. But, maybe your first message to me is, hey, I love your content. I would love to connect and maybe hear more about opportunities at Cox down the line. Or they could say something like, hi, I went to the career fair, really loved the presentation, and I would love to connect and just be in your network so that I can message you in case I apply for any roles down the future. Or, maybe they might even ask me a specific question like, when does your recruitment start for the fall? Something like that, I'd be happy to answer.
Love that. So she pointed out the human side of that message, which is something I've talked about a lot in my content as well. So acknowledging that there is a person who has a job, put a lot of work into showing up themselves to that event and paying them a genuine compliment. Like you said, I like the presentation, or even just asking an insightful question of like, when is going to be the right time in terms of recruitment season? So I love that. So you guys, golden tips here from a recent grad who is now a recruiter making active decisions for a company, that what you should not do. So I love that. Thank you so much for your time. Is there any other nugget of wisdom you'd like to share with everyone watching who is in transition, a recent grad, based on your experience in the last year?
Sure, I can share one more tip, and you kind of alluded to this earlier. So you're talking about how students can reach out for help from career coaches, and I would just say that accountability is a huge point of success during the entire recruitment process. So for me, like I didn't know a whole lot of people going into HR. So reaching out to career coaches who had previously been in recruitment spaces was really helpful for me because they had that experience that I was looking for, but I didn't have those connections in my personal network. Um, or you can just simply reach out to friends who are going through similar situations, who can kind of
Mhm.
empathize with you and listen to you. Or you can even reach out to people a couple years older than you who have been through the job search themselves and they know how difficult it is and they can encourage you in that manner. So really use the resources that you have around you and don't isolate yourself because the job search isn't something that you're meant to do alone.
Could not have said that better. Thank you so much. I so appreciate your time and your insight. And to everyone watching, make sure that you follow Serena's content. She's doing a lot of great video content as well, giving you inside tips of how to be successful as you go through your job search. So thank you, Serena, for your time. It was such a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely.